also want to throw in before my video starts, I'm going to add this in. I do not want this video to be played in front of children. Okay? This video is not made for children to watch, and I mean it by the bottom of my heart. If you've got a child in the room, do not watch this video with the child in the room. Okay? This video contains a subject that I don't think children need to hear. But it is something that I needed to get off my mind. So if you have a child in the room, save this video for when there isn't one around. Okay? Thank you, and have a good day. On with the video. Hello everybody. Good morning. This is Crafting with Dixie. Welcome to Crafting with Dixie. My name is Dixie Kane. My full name is Dixie Diane Kane. Huseman is my maiden name. We were challenged the other night by Mrs. Coffee and also by Rachel Ray to do whipping chats. And this is take 3 for me on account of I, for some reason, cannot seem to make them under 2 hours. My first one was almost 2 hours, and my second one was an hour and 20. So let's see if take 3 I can do this in take 3 just a little bit better. We were challenged the other night by them to make 1 hour chats, or at least a 1 hour chat. For some reason I'm new to this and I can't seem to make them under 2 hours. So this is take 3 for me. So I apologize. This is going to take some getting used to, because I don't know, I seem to have a lot to say. I thought we would go over things about me so that you guys could get to know me just a little better. I was born in Sioux City, Iowa. I was born and named Dixie Diane Kane, or Huseman, I should say, Huseman. My dad is German, and his dad is full German, and but my grandma Huseman was American. So my dad is half and half. My dad did not like having the full German name, so when he turned 18, he changed his last name. He added an E to make it Huseman. It was Huseman. The German name was Huseman. My dad did not like it and changed it to Huseman. So I grew up. So when I was born Dixie Huseman. We were not told this story until we got questioned by our cousins as to why we kept calling them Grandma and Grandpa Huseman, which my grandpa did not mind. He did not mind us calling him Huseman, but his last name was actually pronounced Huseman. And then one day, a cousin from my dad's side, I went to stay with him and his mom and his brother and his dad for a weekend. Actually, for a whole week. My mom and dad drove me to Sibley, Iowa, dropped me off at their farm, and I stayed a whole week with them at their farm. And man, was I homesick, guys. I was so homesick. I've never been a week away from my mom and my dad ever. And they had a tornado that came through. I was never so scared in my whole life. And I cried and I wanted to go home early, but somehow they had talked me into staying the full time. And so I did. And this cousin boy was giving me a hard time because to pass away the week and to give me something to do, they took me to see Grandpa in Minnesota. And Grandpa was excited to see me because he hasn't seen me in years, since I was a very little wee girl. Wee little. You guys, am a mini-me to my Grandma Huseman. I look exactly like my Grandma Huseman. So every time I see that side of the family, they're all like, "Oh, she looks so much like Ma. Don't she look so much like Ma?" That's all I get from that whole side of the family. So yes, I look like my Grandma Huseman. I could be her twin. My grandma passed away back in 1980. And my grandpa passed away in 1983, I believe. And he was killed in a farm. He was killed by a tractor coming up out of a farm field. He was driving home from Wisconsin. He went to go see his youngest daughter in Wisconsin. And when he was driving home, a tractor came up out of a ditch, and he swerved to try and miss it. And my grandpa was a big guy. He had a really big belly. And he got pinned between the steering wheel, and it crushed him. It crushed him. Killed him. And my mom side of the family, my dad has 8 sisters. He was the only boy. Now my mom side of the family, my grandpa on my mom's dad was half Indian. And if you was to see a picture of my grandpa, you could see the Indian in him. You could see it in my mom. And if you go to my Facebook page, I'm Dixie Kane on Facebook. If you go to my Facebook page and you look, you'll see a picture of my mom, me that I made. I don't have pictures of my mom. My mom, she wouldn't take pictures. So when my mom passed away, I made a picture of my mom's graduation picture. And I've got a picture that I put beside my mom. And excuse my computer, it's doing some funny things. I've got pictures of my mother. And then I've got a picture of me that I dubbed next to my mother, kissing my mother on the cheek. But if you look at my mother on my Facebook page, you will see that my mom, she's got dark skin and she's got dark hair. Very dark hair. And all those kids were born very dark skinned. Now, interesting fact that when my mom married my dad has dark hair. But when my mom married my dad, we were all born blondes. Except for my brother Mike, who is the second one in line. was born dark-skinned, very dark-skinned and dark-haired, just like my mother. So out of 6 kids, I have 4 brothers and a sister. And out of 6 kids, only one took the likeness of my mother. Although a lot of us got my mother's features, we did not get her coloring, and we did not get, that Indian side of the family. Now, me and my brother Doug got mostly all the German side of the family. So, and my brother Kelly was a towhead blonde. I was a towhead blonde until I turned 12. And my hair started to darken. And then I wasn't a towhead blonde anymore. We lived in Sioux City until I was about the age of 3. And then we moved to Denver. Well, we moved to Mapleton, lived on a farm there for a year. And that was a blast because my mom was trying to learn to drive, and she would drive circles in the farm field. She would just sit and drive circles in the farm field, and we would chase her. She would get so mad. And there were cows on this farm. And my brothers and I would go out and we would tease the cow. I didn't tell you I have 3 older brothers, and then I have a baby brother, guys. My oldest brother is Doug. And then came Mike. Then came Kelly. Then came Dixie, myself. Then came my little sister Roxanne. And my baby brother Jack. My mom, we always get a kick out of that because my mom called him Jacko Puppies. We always teased him for that. Jacko Puppies. And as a matter of fact, his wife still calls him that to this day, because my mom would call him that in front of his girlfriend, who is now his wife. Yeah, and she loved it so much that she still calls him Jacko Puppy to this day. But he was a very much of a mama's baby. He was spoiled rotten by my mama. He got treated the best, I think, out of all of us. My mom favored the 3 youngest children. I don't know why. But, yeah, my older brothers are not too happy with that. The fact that my mom did not favor them as well. I think they were always into trouble, with the law and everything, that my mom just kind of gave up on them. I mean, she loved us all, don't get me wrong. But for some reason, when there was kind of a break in between Kelly and myself, and when I was born, and she was never so happy to finally have a baby girl, I was kind of spoiled. I was spoiled. And then came along Roxy about 1.5 years later. And I dubbed Roxy my baby. And I never was so happy to have a baby sister in my whole life. And she was mine. And I tried to mother her and help Mom out with her the best I could, and then came along Jack. But for some reason, Jack was not. I liked helping out Mom with Jack, but Jack, for some reason, did not take to him as like I did with Roxy. So to this day, Roxy and I are very close. We fought a lot, and don't get me wrong. We had our cat fights, don't you get me wrong. We had our sisterly fights just like any other family. We would pull hair and throw each other to the ground. Yeah, oh yes, we had our share of fights. But we're still very close to this day. We still try and do things. Although now she became a Jehovah's Witness, and she's kind of slowed down on coming in to see me because I won't become a Jehovah's Witness, and that kind of got in between her and I back when I was homeless. So it was one of the reasons why she threw me out of her home, was because I wouldn't become a Jehovah's Witness. So I don't see my sister too much as much anymore. But when we do see each other, we spend hours and hours and hours catching up. And so enough about that. Let's go on to, then I met my husband back in 1979. I met him just before, let's see, it was like a week after Christmas I met my husband in 1979. My best friend, Daylin, called one night and said, "Hey, can you come over?" She was homeless, and I got her a gal that I babysat for. I became very close to this gal and started babysitting for her. I met her through another friend, and I started babysitting for her, but my friend was homeless, and so I begged Barb to take my friend Daylin in, and she had gotten thrown out by her dad, and she lived with me for a couple of weeks, but my dad would not allow her to stay any longer, and so I talked Barb into taking her in. So Barb took her in as she kind of had to become a nanny to Barb. So I lost my babysitting job, basically, just so that my friend could have a home, which did not bother me one bit, because I was happy at the fact that my friend wasn't out on the streets, and so she got paid by Barb, and then that she would pay rent to Barb, and so Barb got her money back, basically. A good portion of it. And that was the year that I was turning 18. And my birthday is in October. Then that was my first drink, guys. Barb was the one who made me my first drink. I can't remember what it was. It was a mixed drink of some sort. And she didn't allow me to get drunk on it. It was very small because I wasn't of legal drinking age, and because she did not clarify it with my mother and my father. So she just more or less, made me a very, very small, puny amount. Was okay. Wasn't nothing that I enjoyed, I can tell you that. I'm glad it was small, because I do not acquire the taste for any kind of alcohol or liquor. I do like believe it or not, I do like peppermint schnapps. And I do like some of the fruitier wines. My mom used to drink wine and she would give us sips of her wine. My dad was an alcoholic, guys. I grew up in a very tumultuous home. I did not have a good childhood. My mother was mentally ill. And when I say mentally ill, it was bad, guys. My mom was bipolar. She was also schizophrenic. I did not know, but until my mom passed away, my uncle, we were going through pictures of my mom, and my uncle was telling us that my mom tried committing suicide a couple of times and almost accomplished it. Back when she was, I think he said 12 or 13, they found her in the backyard laying on in a drug-induced coma from the medications that she took. Almost didn't make it. There was a time when I was growing up that we came home from school and we found her kind of unresponsive, bleeding from the mouth, and that was because she kept wiping her tongue with a towel because her mouth was so dry. And while she was like unconscious or semi-unconscious, she was rubbing her tongue with a towel. And we just thought that she took too much medication because my mom was famous for not remembering how much medication she took, or whether she took it so she would take it again. And then finally my dad had to get a nurse that would come and administer her medications on a daily or weekly basis. Would go through her medicines to make sure there weren't any extras missing or whatever. And then they took her off pills for a long time and gave her all of her medicines in shot forms, so that she could just have a nurse come once a week and give her the shots. And that went for years. Then she found a new psychiatrist and he took her back to pill form. Excuse me, you guys. And then that started that process all over again. And that's when we come home from school one day and we found her like that. And I just thought it was just too much medication. But my mom and my dad was always out drinking, womanizing, and would not pay any attention to my mom. And my mom did not drive. She was home. She could not go to the grocery store if we were out of food or anything. My mom had to fight and argue to get my dad to bring home groceries and get money for us to go on field trips at school, or, to remember to leave money for us kids for school lunches. Because we didn't get free until I was up in my upper years, in my grade school years. Then came along the free school lunch program. And then we did qualify for that. But that didn't start until I was almost in the 4th or 5th grade. But my dad was a mean drunkard. He would come home and he would beat us kids with 2x4s. He would take a 2x4 and he would put nails And he would leave the nails hanging halfway, yay far out of the 2x4. And he would put plaster around the nails. And he would bring the plaster up to points and let it dry points that high. That was what we got hit with if we were ever got in trouble. And my dad would, for some reason, did not like my older brother. Till the day my dad died hating this brother. I don't get it, because my brother loved my dad. He idolized my dad. No matter how much my dad beat this boy, to this day, my brother idolized him. My brother took a lot of punishment. I mean, if they had the child laws that they have today, back when we were children, we would not have been with my mom and dad. I can guarantee you that, folks. I only got hit with that board one time. And that one time was enough. There was a time, and this went around my high school, and how anybody else found out about this, I have no clue. I don't know if my brother Kelly went to school and spreaded it around the school. I don't know. My brother Kelly was famous for spreading our family history and problems around the schools. I would find out, oh, you're Kelly's sister. Oh, yeah, he's been saying this and he's been doing that. And yep. I was kind of glad when my brother Kelly dropped out of school, because that meant I didn't have to hear any more of what the school didn't know any more of our family problems. But on this one they did. My dad came home drunk one night, and my older brothers were married and out of the house at this point. It was just me, my little brother, and my sister living at home at this point. My dad come home one night and he was beating the heck out of my mom and choking her on the living room floor. And me and my brother and my little sister were sitting at the top step. We had a 2-story house. And we were sitting up at the top step and we were crying, and we were like, I kept saying, come on, you guys, we got to help Mom. And they just would sit and cry. All they would do is cry. And so I got up, and this is the first time I ever cussed, guys. This was the first time I said my first set of cuss words. But I ran down those steps so fast that my legs were shaking so bad, and I was trying to pull him off, and when I couldn't get him off or couldn't get him to stop, I was yelling, stop, Dad, stop, you're gonna kill her, Dad, stop. He was choking her. She could barely breathe. He had his hands around her throat. To this day, when I met my husband, I told my husband one night, just softly and sensually, he was stroking my neck. And I screamed out, stop. And so to this day, I do not like anyone touching my neck. I don't like my grandkids to touch my neck. I don't like any, and I explained to my grandkids, no, because my dad did some bad things to Grandma. My dad did bad things to my mama that makes Grandma not like that hands on the neck thing. And so my grandkids understand, and they know not to touch Grandma's neck. Not, put their hands around my neck. I don't care a hug. I just don't like fingers around my neck. You know what I'm saying? Hands rubbing my neck or any of that. I don't want hands on my neck. To this day, I don't like turtlenecks for that reason. Turtlenecks remind me of that sensation of hands around the neck. So I don't like turtlenecks for that reason. But I came running down the steps, and I was trying to pull him off, and I couldn't get him off, and I finally yelled out, "Leave her alone, you dirty son of a bitch!" And that stopped him dead in his tracks, you guys. He looked like the devil looking at me that night. And he turned around and he started coming towards me. It got him off my mom, but then also he was chasing me. I ran up to my room. I locked my door. We had locks on our doors, you guys. Dad put locks on our doors because there were times when my mom would come, flip out mentally, and my dad put locks on the doors so that if we ever felt that my mom was in a dangerous state, we could lock our door and feel safe. So I ran up to my room and I locked the door, and he come up and was pounding on the door, and we had an old porch that swung out. My room faced the front of the house, and I climbed out onto the roof. Now, this was a stormy, icy night, you guys. I climbed out onto the roof, and I very carefully slid my way to the roof was full of snow and ice at this point. I was barefoot. I was in my nightgown. I slid my way down toward the gutter and almost slid right off the house. I grabbed the gutter and I dropped to the ground. I ran as fast as I could in my bare feet, just in my nightgown. It was like the old flannel nightgowns. I ran in my nightgown as fast as I could down to my grandma's house, who was about a block, almost 2 blocks away. And I pounded on the door. I was praying my grandma was home and not out bowling or something. And I pounded on the door, and I pounded on the door, and my grandma came to the door. And she was like, "Dixie, dear, what are you doing out here in this?" She goes, "And you're barefoot, and you've got no coat. What is going on?" I was crying. Didn't know it cut my feet all up. My feet were all cut from all the ice. And so she sat me down, was bandaging up my feet, washing and cleaning up my feet, and putting gauze and stuff around my feet. And I was telling her that Dad was beating Mom up, so she called the police and had the police go up to the house to check on Mom. Meanwhile, my dad had left the house, I guess, and went to the bars. And from the bar, he called my grandma and asked my grandma if I was down there. And my grandma said, "No, she's not here. But if she shows up here, I'll let you know." And he told her he was going to come in and check. And she said, "Cliff, don't you come here. I'll call the law." Well, she was making me up a room back in her back bedroom, my mom's old bed. And she was making me a bed. She was putting some fresh linens on and stuff. And she said, "You're going to stay with me the night, Dixie. I'll call Mom and I'll let her know where you're at. And I'll let her know you're okay." And all of a sudden, there was a knock on her front door. And I freaked out. I was like, "It's Dad, it's Dad, it's Dad." She goes, "Stay quiet." Oh man, you guys, I think I took the deepest breath I could possibly take and tried not to cry, tried not to let out a sound. And she admitted oh man, my heart dropped when she told my dad, yes, I was there. But then she turned around and said, "But you can't come in, Cliff, 'cause you're drunk. And I don't trust what you'll do to Dixie. And I will not let you take her home. She will stay here. I already talked to Donna. And Donna knows that Dixie is with me. And Donna said she could stay the night, and she's sleeping, so leave her alone. You go off and you go do your thing. My dad was so drunk at this point, and he was like, give her to me. She's my daughter, blah, blah, blah. Give me that. I can't remember what he called me, a tramp or something. And my grandma said, Cliff, listen to you. Go away. You can't come into my home. He tried to barge his way in, so my grandma called the law. And he took off. And so they went looking for my dad. I don't think they ever found him, though. He bar hops. I mean, he knew every bar in town. And he visited every bar in town. And the people in the bars would lie for my dad, so they couldn't find him that night. But yeah, that story made it all the way around the schools. It made it around the schools. I was never so embarrassed in my whole life. I can talk about it now, but back then it was a scary topic, guys. And it was hard to live in a life like that. I mean, there were times when my dad would come after my brother Mike, my second oldest brother. And because he wanted to give him a haircut, and my brother didn't want a haircut. And my brother got up and took off, and my brother ran away from home. He didn't come home for like 3 months. We knew where he was at, but we couldn't prove it. So back then, the laws didn't care. They didn't go looking for him. If you knew where they were at, they were in a safe place. Even though we knew the place where he was at was a drug home. And that was the beginnings of my brother getting strung out on dope and glue sniffing was big then. And so this brother became a glue sniffer to the point where he almost caused my little brother, he kind of forced my little brother into breathing this glue. And I went up and I told my mom and my dad that Mike was in the basement with the baggie around my little brother's mouth and nose, forcing him to sniff the glue. And Jack was acting very, something didn't agree with it. My little brother was only maybe 6 at the time. And my dad ran down those steps so damn fast, and my brother took off and never came home for 3 months. And my dad was mean to my brothers, guys. We didn't only just get that board with the nails and the plaster, but my dad would sometimes grab these boys from their faces and stretch their mouths. With his hands, he would stretch their side of their mouths and beat their heads against the wall. He did that with my oldest brother to the point where my brother was bleeding from the ears. And the cops still would not take us away from my parents at that point. So I am thankful for the child safety laws that we have nowadays. It's scary because you go into a hospital and you have to account for why that child is the way that child is, and that you had no interference in why that child is the way that child is. And that's a scary thing, but it's there for a reason, and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for it because I wished it was there when I was a child. Because I guarantee you that if those child safety laws were there back when I was a child, we would not have been with my mom and my dad, and we would have grown up a much different set of children. Although, for everything that we went through growing up, we turned out to be fairly good kids. I think we grew up to be fairly good kids. Although my brothers, did dabble in the drugs and stuff like that. Me, my sister, and my little brother grew up completely different than my big brothers. Because like I said at the beginning, we were somewhat spoiled. We were treated a little differently than my older brothers were. Oh, by the way, guys, I'm working on the mermaid canvas that I won from Shine Like a Diamond. This is the Under the Sea Dreaming mermaid. And I got the top half of her done. I'm now working on the bottom half. Oh, you guys can't see what I'm working on anymore. What happened? Oh, there you go. Hi, guys. How are you today? Yeah, so, so we grew up much differently than the boys. I was the first one out of 6 kids to graduate high school. My brother Mike dropped out. My brother Doug dropped out to join the services. My brother Doug kept getting put back because he was skipping school a lot. He would go play football in the park or something instead of going to school. And not only was he being beat at home, but he was being beat at school. By the principal at school would beat him with a wooden board, just like my dad, you know. So my brother didn't want to go to school, and he would ditch school and go play football in the park until the end of the school day. And then my brother Mike started skipping school and got into a bunch of kids. Like I said, that's what started his snookliffing days, and he would ditch school and go sit in like empty garages, and they would sniff glue and do dope and everything else all day long. And so my brother Mike dropped out of school at the age of I want to say he made it to 9th grade, 8th grade. My brother Kelly made it to about 7th or 8th grade, and then he dropped out of school and also got into the drug scene. My brother Kelly spent a lot of his time got taken away from my mom and dad and put in state care, and was put into because of all the trouble he was getting into, was put into a state home for boys. And he pretty much spent the rest of his life there. There was a point when Kelly was out roaming, and before he got taken away from by the state, when he got to come back home for a short period of time, he started getting in trouble again and hanging around the wrong crowd again. And they were out walking along a fence when there was a Doberman Pinscher in this yard. And they were taking a stick and they were walking up along the fence, and they were, rubbing the stick along the fence and teasing this dog. Well, this dog finally had enough, and he jumped the fence, and they all took off running, but my brother Kelly was the one nearest the dog. And the dog got my brother Kelly and lunged at him and just missed his jugular and got his whole side of his face and ripped his mouth off. So there was a big gaping hole in my brother's face, and they wouldn't let my mom see because it was that bad. It ripped all the skin clear to the bone off the whole one cheek. Left a big gaping hole in his cheek on the side of his face. So they had to pull his cheeks over and everything else. That kid had to endure lots and lots of plastic surgery. And he deemed the face at school, just before he quit school, he deemed the nickname of Kool-Aid, because everybody would call him Kool-Aid because of the scar on the side of his face. And it looked like Kool-Aid running out of his mouth is what it looked like. So he got the nickname in school Kool-Aid. He thought it was cute and funny, I think. He never seemed to bother him. He would laugh and smile and giggle and whatnot. But he endured many, 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 until he was almost an adult, plastic surgeries. And my brother, he did end up winning the lawsuit. Took many years, but he finally won the lawsuit, which paid for all of his plastic surgeries and whatnot. He didn't get a whole lot of spending money out of that, I don't believe. I think most of it went on medical bills. But, yeah. Then there was me, my little brother, and my little sister, and we were the good ones. I never ditched school but one time. It was a snow day, and my dad's policy was, if the school bus, because we were bused 30 miles from home, and if this and us girls, we could not wear slacks to school. We had to have a dress. Girls had to be in dresses. Boys could wear the pants or the slacks. So we had to stand at the bus stop with bare legs, guys. And in Denver, when it got cold, And they did not put down salt or sand down on their streets in Denver, or they never used to anyway. And so there were a lot of times where the bus would show up either really super late or wouldn't even show up at all. And so my dad's rule of thumb was we stood outside for at least a half an hour at the bus stop. And there were times where my little sister and we could not feel our legs when the wind were blowing and the snow was knee high. We couldn't feel our legs. And so my dad's rule was that we had to stand out there at least a half an hour. There were many a times, me and my sister, we didn't have a clock or anything, so we had to kind of guess at how long we stood out there. And then we made it almost an hour, and that bus never showed up. And it turns out that the bus never did come out to get us that day. So we stood out in the frigid snow for a good hour. Came home and would whine and bawl because our skin burned and hurt so bad. And well, there was one of those times where we came home early from the bus stop, and we saw the bus as we was walking up to the house. We saw the bus go by. And so we didn't want our dad to know, and Mom was sleeping, so we all snuck down into the basement, all of us. And we hid out, and I kept asking my oldest brother, I kept asking him, so Doug, what happens when we have to have a note for school tomorrow? And he goes, I'll fix you a note, don't worry about it. So my brothers were experts at signing my mom's signature to school notes. And when I handed that note in to the school, you guys, oh my gosh, I kept asking him, so Doug, how do we come into the house so that Mom doesn't know that we were here all day? And he goes, I'll show you when the time comes. So we sat and quietly played down in the basement. My mom slept the whole day away. And my mom didn't even wake up. And then when we all snuck out the back door, and we came in through the front door. Hi, Mom, we're home. And my mom never knew, but that was the only time I ever skipped school, you guys. It was not a good feeling for me all day that day, because I was worried that Mom would find out, and I didn't like that feeling. And so I found out I didn't like skipping school, so I never skipped school again, ever again. That was my first time and my last time. Never did it again. I was the first one to graduate out of 6 kids. My sister ended up, well, I ended up getting pregnant. I met my husband in 1979, and I ended up getting pregnant a couple months after I met my husband. And I told my husband I thought I was pregnant, and I did not want to go to my family doctor. I was adamant I would not go to my family doctor. So my husband got me in with his family doctor, and he took me to my appointment. He took an early day off of work, and he explained to them that he needed to take me to the doctor, and they were fine with it. And I worked a job at a nursing home. To get my high school credit, I had to have a job as part of my senior credit. And so I had only half days of school. The other half we had to go to our jobs and work our jobs. And I didn't have to be at my job till 4 in the afternoon. So which meant I would get out of school and I'd have a couple of hours, several hours. I would get out at noon, and usually I wouldn't get home from school till 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then that usually gave me about an hour before, to get my uniform ready and whatnot to get to work. I was a kitchen helper. I was considered a kitchen aide at a nursing home. And that was my first job. Well, actually, no, that was my second job. My first job, I worked 3 years. 3 years before that job, I worked in the cornfields as a detasseler. And I sucked at it, you guys. I would lose my row. They would threaten to fire me, but they never did. I would lose my row. They would yell out, "Huseman, you're missing a bunch. You're in the wrong row. Huseman, you're plucking the wrong corn." It's like, oops. They would threaten to fire me, but they would make, they would give me a timeout on the bus, and they would make me go sit on the bus for the rest of the day. And and if you had to be put on the bus for the rest of the day, you did not earn money that day. Or from the time you were put on the bus, the time clock stopped running for you. So, needless to say that my paychecks were not very big. But my dad made me go do it every single summer. And, yeah. But yeah, I was working in a nursing home. And my husband got me from school that day and took me to my doctor's appointment that he made with his family doctor. And his family doctor was a Catholic doctor, and he did not believe in, if you were not married, sleeping together, or and he made my husband leave the room, and I started to cry, and I said, "No, I want my boyfriend in here with me." And I explained to him that Raymond had, that we pretty much knew that I was pregnant, and my husband right away did the right thing. And he told me, well, we discussed this before I would even sleep with him. What happens if I get pregnant? And my husband said, "If you get pregnant, I will do the right thing by you." And I did end up getting pregnant off the first time we slept together, you guys. So, we talked about getting birth control, but, we didn't get it in time. So, yeah, you can get pregnant off the very first time. And my husband proposed to me the minute I told him I felt that I was pregnant. I said, I think I'm pregnant because I'm getting sick in the morning. And I don't feel, I feel different. I don't feel right. And I'm very, very sick in the morning and all day long. And he made me my appointment. We went, and the doctor would not let him be in the exam room. And I said, no, I want him in here. He's the father of my baby. We're engaged to be married. We're going to be married June 21st, 1980. And he was like, okay, it's against my policy. But I trust you and I believe you. Well, actually, we were supposed to get married before then, but that minister called me from that church and said that he was going on vacation and that the time slot would not work for him. So I had to go find a different church and minister to marry us. And I never told my mom and dad that I was pregnant ever. Because I was not that I didn't want to tell my mom, because I was dying to tell my mom, but I was deathly afraid of my dad and what my dad would say and do. My dad always told me that I was not allowed to marry anybody but a lawyer or a doctor. And when I met my husband and I introduced my husband to him, my dad's words were, what do you do for a living? And my husband said, I'm a partsman. And my dad was like, no, you can't marry him. He's a partsman. He don't make no money. And I was like, this isn't about money. This is about love. This is about who I want to be with. So yeah, that doctor, he finally ended up letting my husband come in, and he told us together that yes, I was pregnant, and he told us how long, and he told us the expected due date, which was supposed to have been December 2nd. But I went over. Well, my sister, snooping through my room, one day my husband brought his little baby sister over, who was my brother Jack's age, and she wanted to jump on the trampoline. My mom and dad had a trampoline. And she wanted to jump on she wanted to come over and jump on the trampoline. So I said, Raymond, bring Amy over with ya. And I had my brother's, my little niece, who was a little over a year old. I had my little niece there that day that I was watching for my brother. And so Raymond brought over Amy, and we were playing with my niece Michelle out on the trampoline that morning. And out comes my sister. I know a secret, Dixie's pregnant. And I'm like, really? How did you find? She had my prenatal vitamins, and she was swinging them around in the air. And I'm like, grabbed them from her, and I chased her, and I said, how come you were in my room? She had to have looked way the heck under my mattress, way the heck in the center of my mattress, under my mattress, guys, to find those. Because that's where I was keeping all my stuff. My paperwork and everything was under my mattress in my room. Never thought my sister would throw me under the bus like that, and in front of my brother's sister, of all things. So my brother's sister jaw dropped open, and she said, You guys are gonna have a baby? I'm gonna be an aunt? And we had to tell her yes, and we had to tell her to keep her mouth shut, that we wanted to tell mom and dad ourselves. By the way, I call my mother-in-law, and my father-in-law mom and dad. I had a very good relationship with my mom and my father-in-law from the time I met my husband till the time they died. They were better to me than my own parents were, believe it or not, you guys. And I hate to say it, but they were more like my parents than my parents were. They helped us out when we were having problems with money. We had a rough go when we first got married. We had a rough go because I had to quit my job because I had morning sickness so bad. It wasn't morning sickness, it was all day sickness. It was all night sickness. I had morning sickness so bad. I was the first woman. I became anemic. I was the first woman in Iowa to have a blood transfusion during pregnancy. So I kind of made history, you guys. My doctors thanked me after Tabitha was born. I did not have Tabitha until I went overdue. She was a big baby. I begged my doctor because I was huge. And I knew it was going to be a big baby because they told me the baby was measuring almost 9 pounds. And I begged him to take the baby because I couldn't breathe and I couldn't walk. I begged them to take the baby. I begged them to take the baby so that I wouldn't have to have a cesarean. I did not want a cesarean, but he was, like I said, a Catholic doctor, and he did not believe in taking the baby early. No, the baby comes when the baby comes. So, when she was born 8:15 and a half pounds. She came on December 8th. My due date was December 2nd. She's almost a week overdue. She was a week overdue. My sister, who I found out later, was more pregnant than I was, you guys, and had the nerve to find my stuff and come running out there in front of my husband's little sister, yelling about my pregnancy when I found out she was more pregnant than me. She had her baby on December 2nd, my due date. She had her baby on December 2nd. And when she was coming out of the hospital, I was going into the hospital. My husband and I have had a good marriage. There was one situation where I had to, and I'll tell this in another story, where I had to have my husband put in jail for a while. But you guys, it worked out for the best, and I'll explain it in another whip and chat if you guys want to hear it. The reason why I had my husband arrested and put in jail. If you want to hear that story, just let me know it down in the comments and I'll tell it to you. Otherwise, I'm going to end it here. And because I have a history of going to 2-hour mark on my whip and chats, and I am now at 1:03, almost 1:04. So I'm going to end it here because Mrs. Coffee said 1 hour whip and chat. So I just wanted to also throw in real quick, like, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification button to hear more videos. And they won't all be like this, guys. I needed to get this off my chest and come so that I could feel um, relieved. I'm thankful for the child safety laws nowadays, mostly because my grandchildren are living a lot of the same life that I lived and that I've been fighting for the past 2.5 years to help my grandchildren. And right now, kind of banned from them and feeling a little sad, down, and lonely, and which made me want to bring this out into the open. So if you know of a family who's struggling the way that I and my brothers and my sisters struggled growing up, if you know of a family that a wife that's screaming for help or asking for help, please send them help. Get them help, because nowadays there is help out there for women who are going through these situations. And a lot of times we don't understand what these women are going through, but I've seen it with my own mom, and now I've seen it with my daughter and her situation in life. And I truly believe that I truly believe that I wouldn't have the learning disabilities that I have had in my life had I not gone through such a tremendous childhood, and seen and lived the things that I've seen and lived. So please, if you're out there and you know of another family or children that are going through something similar, please call and get them some help. Um, they may not be too happy to have it at that exact moment. My daughter certainly wasn't. When I called the law in on her situation, but did thank me for that a year down the road. So I think that once she got the drugs out of her system and was able to actually see how it helped her situation, you know, she did thank me at that moment. So you guys, don't be afraid to step in and call for help for these people. They truly need it. And I don't want to, I feel bad for kids who have to grow up in these kinds of homes, in these kinds of situations. I really do. And but yeah, that brought out a lot of learning disabilities in me. By the time I graduated high school, I think I was reading, writing, and math at a 6th or 7th grade level. And I think math was more like a 4th or 5th grade level. And I'm not proud. I'm not proud of it. I'm just now coming out with it in the last couple of years and letting people know about my disabilities, because it is not something that I can help, and but explains why I don't spell well, or explains why I don't read books. I cannot read big words. I can sound them out and I can figure them out. But to sit and read a book for a whole sentence and not stumble over my words it's not easy for me. So I do not join in on book reading or any of that kind of stuff. And if it's not made in a movie form, then I don't know nothing about it. But there are things like Harry Potter I did not ever go watch on TV because it just didn't interest me. And Grey's Anatomy, I know nothing about it. There are a lot of TV shows I know nothing about. I really don't watch TV. I listen to some shows, but most of the shows I listen to are on TLC. The big one I'm into nowadays is Live PD. So I like watching Live PD. Other than that, I don't watch a lot of TV shows. I do watch Ghost Hunters. I do believe in ghosts, and I am fascinated by ghosts. And I don't want to ever meet one. I don't ever want to be in that situation, but yeah, I am. I can't remember who commented that their husband watched ghost stories or something, and yeah, and I was like, oh boy, they wouldn't want to know what I did. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna let you go from here. Please don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and the bell to be notified. All right, love you. Bye. Bye bye. Thank you for coming.